Some of the most dramatic and intense moments in entertainment history are when we, the viewers, are presented with betrayals. So today we are here to talk about what we believe are some of the greatest betrayals in anime history.
Or at least what Spen and I remember.
Yeah, we're gonna compare what it is that all these have in common so that we can leave here together more informed on how to write our own betrayals that will hopefully leave lasting impacts and impressions like these animes that we are about to be discussing. A quick heads up to those listening, the podcast contains spoilers on the following shows: Assassination Classroom, Steins Gate, Aldnoah Zero, Shield Hero, and Fate Zero / Stay Night / Unlimited Blade Works. If you don't want to see the spoilers from any of these shows, you can find their time sections along the video bar so you know where to skip them. If you stick around after that, we'll be discussing episodes 5, 6, and 7 of Serial Experiments Lain, our latest anime book club show where we watch and then talk about the show so far. But if you don't know already, you're listening to the Sunovageek podcast.
Son of a geek!
Hey Zeo, how's it going?
Great, Spen. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good, a little tired and exhausted, but ready to do this podcast.
I had this witty little limerick I was gonna throw out, but it just fleeted away the second I started talking, and I lost every train of thought. So I guess let's just move on to the podcast portion and not worry about talking.
Well, I was curious, how's things going with your house?
Oh,
Because you bought a new house, but you have to rebuild a bunch of it, I guess.
yeah, we're closing this week. So I had to go through all this process of getting approved and then making sure all the paperwork's lining up and make sure we have to get it appraised and inspected and all that fun stuff. But yeah, we should be closing this week, and then I have a lot of things I have to do to make sure it's livable for my family.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
So is it, because you said it's a fixer-upper.
Yes. Yeah. It's old.
So is it like a frat house before? Or is it more like
it's just an old
some people
home.
were just kind of okay with it?
It's from the 70s.
Oh god, do you even have plumbing?
Yeah, I have plumbing. It can technically function as a living space, but it doesn't smell very good and it doesn't look very good. So it's just mostly cleaning up and making it more tolerable to be in.
Is it like an old person smell?
No, it's like an old cat lady smell. So somebody had a bunch of cats. Yeah, the carpets are disgusting. So we're ripping everything out, putting hardwood floors in, and repainting the whole place, and kind of going from there.
As much as this would suck to happen, I also kind of hope it happens where you're ripping up the carpets or opening up a wall and you find buried treasure in a dead body or something not like a recently dead body, but an old skeleton.
Okay.
Just but also with lots of treasure, so you're kind of hey, gross, but it's okay.
Hey, money. Yeah, okay. That'd be amazing. I remember one time I saw this article. This guy bought a house on this random property, and turned out it was an old distillery during the Prohibition era. So all the walls were laced with bottles of old alcohol, like gin and vodka and whiskey. This guy had a distillery in the basement, and he would hide them all throughout the house and everything. The video showed him ripping up the floor and just bottles everywhere, breaking a hole in the wall. And there's bottles everywhere, just full bottles of alcohol. He was able to sell each bottle for $200 a piece.
So why was this person hiding all of it?
It was during the Prohibition era when alcohol was illegal in America.
There was a period of time it was illegal in America?
Yeah.
Wow.
It wasn't a very long time frame, but there was a time frame where it was illegal. So a bunch of illegal bars kind of appeared. And this guy had an illegal bar, and he just hid all the alcohol in his house.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So what did bars do at the time then? Be what can I get for you?
Well,
Well, we got
really at the time. They were underground bars.
Milk and water. What do you
Again, it was more of you go find a shack in the middle of the woods, and turns out there's a secret bar there.
Wow, that's crazy. And that was the Prohibition era?
Yep, that was during the Prohibition era. Yep.
Wow. I'm going to have to read up on that. That's kind of cool now.
Yeah. We're not a history podcast, Ben.
No.
We're an anime podcast.
Yeah, you know what? You might say that anybody listening still is just feeling very betrayed right now.
Oh, that was almost planned.
Okay. So we've each gone and grabbed a few different animes. I shared my list with Zeo so that he wouldn't pick ones that I already picked, because I just wanted to make sure that I got to do these ones. And he's got his own list.
And I didn't share it with Spen because I want to surprise him.
Cool. So, Zeo, why don't you go first with one of yours? Because you might have a fourth one that you might do later. We don't know yet.
Fine. All right. So, in my top 3 list of possible 4, apparently, my number 1 I want to talk about was Assassination Classroom. Have you ever seen that anime?
No, I have not.
So,
well, the first episode.
Okay. It's not my standard style of anime, but I kind of thought the premise was interesting, so I just continued to watch it, and then I just never stopped watching it, and I finished it.
Okay.
Anyways, it's about like this yellow alien thing is gonna destroy the world, and he won't do it unless he can, like, people will kill him. And the only way people will kill him is if he can personally train the assassins to kill them. So, like, he has a class that he's training to be assassins. He's training them to kill him before he kills the world. It's kind of weird, but
okay,
it's interesting. Anyways, you follow the whole class. They're learning how to be better assassins through school and all their training and such. And there's this one girl, her name is Kaino. She's like a green-haired girl, and everybody grows pretty close-knit, and they become like a family, even with the teacher. Like, even though he's training them to kill him, and he's gonna kill the world at the end, like, they all just get really close. They're basically a giant family of happiness. But lo and behold, Kaino is not. She is very mad at the teacher, and she decides to betray everyone and kill him herself.
Okay.
Yeah, so she, like, captures him in a trap, and she has this deep-rooted story of how it's his fault while she's lost all of her tragedy, and she was experimented on, basically created to kill him. And so I guess, in a sense, she's betraying the class because they're family. However, she's really just trying to accomplish the goal of what the class is designed to do. I don't know. It's very confusing in that aspect.
Okay.
It's probably the weakest betrayal out of the 3 I'm talking about. But it was a betrayal that I could remember.
Okay. So for this betrayal, then, what do you find makes it so powerful? Why is it that this one's kind of stuck with you for so long?
It wasn't that it's so powerful to me. It was that I needed a list of betrayals, and it was one I could think about.
I haven't
we're
off to a great start, Zeo.
I know. Here's the thing. It's a very odd topic, and I tried really hard to find like a list of betrayals that I remembered that I watched and stuff. Like, I researched all the anime I had and that I've seen and stuff that I can remember that really kind of stuck out, and I remembered this one. It didn't really stick out too much. I don't think it's necessarily great. It's all right.
Okay. Well, let's talk about this one a little bit, though.
Okay.
So, how is the betrayal set up exactly? Because you said that in this betrayal, she betrays her class and kills him herself.
She tries to. She's not.
Or
successful.
Tries to.
So she's portrayed as like this really sweet girl, right? So the entire time she's been in this part of this classroom, she's supposed to be really sweet and supposed to like be like the heart of the group. So, like I said, everyone's kind of grown to be more of a family, even though they're all training to be assassins to kill their teacher. They grow to love him, and he grows to love them, and it's an interesting emotional dynamic. And with her, she's supposed to be the heart of the group. She's always like viewed as a softie and maybe not so tough, and kind of the one that people don't look to be the big assassin who is gonna kill him. And then turns out that I believe I'm trying to remember. Her hair turns into tentacles, I think.
Okay.
She was an experiment. She's kind of been sent in as like almost like a sleeper agent, right? And they had this whole moment built up where they plan to assassinate the teacher, but she kind of goes against that plan and tries to kill him herself. And the betrayal is less against the teacher because that's been the plan the entire time, and more against the rest of the class because her personality is supposed to be like cheerful and kind and passive, and then um she changes like almost on the flip where she like super determined and she mad because I believe her somebody it's either she was experimented or her sister died or something like that.
Okay.
And she just changes instantly and tries to kill himself, and she's like super strong and powerful and just very different from how she was portrayed initially. So I guess it'd be more of a
Okay.
betrayal of character.
So then how long had the class been planning this one specific assassination when she kind of came in with her
I
own
don't know.
thing?
Every like 4, 5, 6 episodes, they're planning something.
Okay.
This is probably I'd say halfway to 2/3 of the way through the show. I think
So then my next question then is, with her betrayal, how does it affect the rest of the series?
it doesn't.
Okay.
She kind of just becomes accepted again later, and then stays as is.
Okay, so then there's a period of time where after her betrayal, kind of people are unsure of her.
Just mostly the episode. There isn't really like
Okay.
it doesn't carry a lot of weight through the whole series, I believe.
Okay. See, I'm actually kind of excited that you chose this one because this kind of plays in a little bit into the first betrayal that I have.
Okay.
So I'm going to be, it's going to be, this has actually turned out really well because I think this is going to be a really great example of, or comparison with the next one.
Okay.
But before I get into that, was there anything else for this one that you wanted to talk about or bring up?
Unfortunately, no. I don't remember too much about it. I didn't do a whole lot of research on it because I was more interested in the other topics that I'm coming into,
Okay.
I suppose. But I just wanted to play off the memory again. I just needed like a third story to remember.
This actually worked out really well because the one that I have is there's a betrayal in Steins Gate, and I believe you've seen this show.
Yeah, I love Steins Gate. It's really good.
Yeah. So in Steins Gate, there's a moment early on in this series where Moeka betrays the whole group and ends up killing Mayuri.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens here is there's a scene in the anime. Oh, by the way, Zeo, at the end of this, because I didn't know what animes that you chose, we're going to just re-record a thing where it's just like, we're going to be spoiling these shows.
Oh, all right. My bad.
No, it's all good. No, it's perfect. I mean, we can easily throw whatever we want. Like, I could throw the word butts somewhere at the beginning of the episode, which I just did. But, sorry. Okay. So, I believe that this is one of the three that I've chosen, I think this is the most powerful one. I wanted to start out kind of with the big one here first, especially with the one that you just talked about.
Okay.
Because in Steins Gate, we have the situation where Moeka is this very quiet and kind of like antisocial character who's kind of a part of the group. They start to kind of incorporate her in with what's going on. She's very reserved, sticks to herself. And so you just kind of, there's still something off about her, but you can never really quite put it. Mm-hmm. And then later on in the series, there's this moment where, how do I want to start this? Okay, so I want to first, before I get into how, to the actual betrayal itself, I think the other thing that's important to talk about is Mayuri and how she's a character that's kind and wonderful. She cares so much about everyone and is always trying to do her hardest to make sure everyone in the group is happy. And there's it's almost like there's no weakness to her character. There's no like absolutely massive strength to her character either, but she just kind of hovers in and around kind of that, just everybody loves her, everybody looks to her for just affection. Not affection, it's not the right word for it, but she's just that perfect, wonderful, kind friend that anybody would ever want to have in their friend circle.
Okay.
And so that's part of why this also makes it so powerful of a betrayal, because she's taken from everybody. But we're gonna kind of talk a little bit about a build up to the betrayal that happens very shortly before the moments before it happens, but that also aids into how I believe this betrayal is so powerful. And it's because moments before it happens, there's this terrorist threat that everybody's watching on TV, and the music shifts and it starts to set this tone where just things are very uncomfortable. Everybody's watching the TV, they don't like this. Then there's this character, Suzu, who starts to panic in the background for what appears to be some other reason. She's noticed something, or maybe she's remembered something. We don't know at this point in the show what's going on. So she ends up, what seems to be no reason, just runs out of the room, and there's a bit more ominous music that plays. We see Okabe look at an hourglass where the sand is no longer falling in it. So again, it's pushing more of like something is strange and is happening here that shouldn't be.
Yeah.
We then see Mayuri's watch stops working, and her dialogue is, "Oh no, don't tell me you're broken. I've taken extra good care of you and everything," which is also a really powerful line, because I believe it kind of symbolizes a lot of stuff that's going on, how she's always taking care of everybody, and then the broken aspect, which kind of plays into some other stuff that happens later on. But then the big thing is there's all these things that are happening one right after another in this short period of time where everything just feels uncomfortable and weird, and it's a very tense moment. Yeah. Then suddenly these masked gunmen come running into the room. And as a viewer, we're like, wait a minute, did Suzu do this? Because she just left the room after remembering something. So we don't know if she's involved in this at all. Then there's this very slow reveal as we see Moeka walk into the room. Everybody's unsure of what's going on. Everybody's got guns drawn, or all of these masked men have guns drawn on everybody. She comes in and she reads off everybody's name that's in the room, except for one. And then in this kind of very panicked voice, we hear Okabe ask, "Well, what about Mayuri?" So Moeka then replies with, "The little one isn't needed," pulls out a gun, and boom, shoots her. And it's this very, what makes the betrayal so powerful is the build up, basically how they set the characters up initially. Mm-hmm. There's the build up in the moment where they add all this tension and they make things weird and uncomfortable, and for a lot of things that don't make any sense. Then they bring in a character where it doesn't really make sense why she's betraying them, and then she does it in a way where she takes away this character that's extremely important to everybody. And all of this stuff is really, really important to the build up, but what makes the betrayal that much more powerful after is and what I think why it makes it into a true betrayal is because this then becomes the driving factor for the rest of the series. And it's that Okabe is going back in time over and over again, trying to find a different timeline where Mayuri is saved. Yeah. And so that's why I believe this one is truly one of them. It's the one that kind of sits like, even just talking about it, I can just feel the dread in my stomach, just because of how everything was set up with the characters and how it's all presented and delivered to us, and then the lasting impact that it has throughout the rest of the series.
Yeah, I definitely would say it's a much more impactful moment for the series because it kind of almost changes direction for, I don't want to say a more serious tone. Like it becomes more of a darker tone, because before it was always like trying to figure out, the different universes and the time travel.
Well, it was still a darker tone before because they were trying to save, I don't remember the girl's name, but it was that other scientist. Yeah, they were trying to save her.
No, but I meant like, I should say it almost seemed more hopeless because, like you said, he tried to jump through multiple different timelines to try to save Mayuri. Because it's like his best friend, and it just, no matter what he did, it always seemed like nothing could change that death. Like she just had to die.
Yeah. What I believe, and when I think any of the aspects that we've talked about, if any of those were to be taken out, I don't think that the betrayal would be as powerful. It would still be powerful. Mm-hmm. But if it was some random person that instead of Moeka, like a new, I'll, in quotation marks, I'll say an enemy that showed up, someone we'd never met before and shot her, it wouldn't be the same as Moeka, who had been kind of this very awkward character to begin with and hard to bring into the group. And then they managed to bring her in and started doing things with her. And it was kind of at a moment where it looked like she was just starting to open up to everybody as well.
Yeah.
And so they just kind of kept layering things on together. And I just thought it was absolutely it was terrible, but in a way where it was just like a terrible situation to be in. But I think one of the best
Just
betrayals.
beautifully written. I mean, Steins Gate is one of the best animes I've ever seen. It's multi-layered and complex, and one of those things where even as you're watching things unfold, you're still kind of lightly confused on what's going on, and it does a really good job at keeping you on edge, not knowing the full story until the very end. Really,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, I love it,
it's
and
really good.
I think the one that you were talking about before, Assassination Classroom. I think there's some comparisons that would be kind of fun to do between the two of them.
Yeah. So as you can see, I know what you're saying there. Where like they're both almost like a part of a family and such. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, and I guess with Assassination Classroom, not to say it isn't big or impactful. I mean, it was definitely unexpected because I think at the time, you don't see it coming, and when it happened, it was a big moment. I think what probably made it less of a big thing is just because they just almost forget about it and move on with their lives as if
Mm-hmm.
it was just like an episode arc versus something layered into the overstretching narrative of the show.
Yeah, I think that's from everything you were talking about with Assassins. Oh, excuse me. Everything that you were talking about with Assassination Classroom, I think that's the one thing that was missing that could have made it a very dramatic and powerful one.
Yeah,
But
Steins Gate
would
felt
have been to continue it on.
yeah, Steins Gate felt more organic, a part of the story, as this felt just like they needed an episode for it. They're like, oh, how do we do something surprising for this episode? And oh, we'll let this character suddenly be a master assassin already, who had a lot more skill than everyone thought she did.
Yeah, and I think it's important to mention too to anybody listening. We're not saying that Assassination Classroom. I have a hard time saying that. We're not saying that it needs to change or it should have done it differently.
Right.
Because I don't think the betrayal was the focus of what they wanted. It's just kind of a comparison of why the one ended up being more powerful than the other. So we're not saying they
Agree.
should change anything.
I enjoyed Assassination Classroom throughout both seasons. It's a really good show, and it had a narrative it needed to tell, and it told that story, and it did a good job with it. I just view, yeah, it's just I don't personally think narratively is quite as strong because it didn't feel as organic. I mean, the betrayal was big. It was just how
Mm-hmm.
it was carried on after that. Everyone just kind of forgave her and moved on. Like within the same episode, it was just, oh, we have a conflict. Let's button up the conflict and move on. That's kind of what it was. It didn't feel like it lingered or carried on longer than just that 20-minute episode.
So in Assassination Classroom,
Mhm.
was that kind of how they went through a lot of the aspects, where it's kind of like things were characters generally throughout it, where an event would happen and they kind of move past it and move on to the next one?
Yeah, for the most part,
Okay.
that was just
Well,
the
that see
style of the
that fits.
show. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very fitting for how they dealt with that
There are
then.
a few narratives, like I said, they had like overarching narratives, like over 4 or 5, 6 episodes each. But each episode kind of had its own little premise where it focused on a certain aspect just to kind of have its own personal story, and like they did a really good job at letting each character have their own journey, and I think that was just her journey being showcased. When you have an anime with 20 plus characters versus an anime with 7 or 8 characters, you have to be a little more conscious on who you give the screen time to.
Oh, that makes sense.
But anyways,
Before we move on, though, there's one line. It's not really related to the betrayal thing, but I never realized how powerful and amazing the line was.
yeah,
That I wanted to quickly talk about. And it was when the Mayuri's watch stops working. She says, "Oh no, don't tell me you're broken. I've taken extra good care of you and everything." And I never realized how amazing of a line that is, because after this point, Okabe is broken, and before this point, she was always taking care of him. She was always bringing him things
yeah,
like the food and the drinks, and she was always helping him through stuff. And just when it's going through and I rewatched the part, I like my heart sunk a little bit. I just realized, like, my God, like, the writing is so good.
Yeah, I guess that never stuck out to me the first time. Man, I watched Steins Gate years ago. I probably should give it another watch just to kind of see how it's changed. Because since then, I wasn't in YouTube or anything like that. I wasn't writing my own scripts. I wasn't telling my own stories at the time. So I'm curious how my perspective on it would be as a storyteller to what things I would see, and especially since I've seen it once and watching it all kind of flood back into me. That'd be kind of cool.
Oh, God. Yeah, I'm probably gonna start rewatching this too.
Oh man, we should do it as an anime book club.
That would be kind of sweet to do.
Yeah, that way we can.
We've currently got one going that's pretty good in my opinion. But,
well, yeah, I mean, I'm thinking it'd be great to have something we both enjoy pretty much all the way through.
Not just one that I'm enjoying.
But anyways, let's move on. I got another one, Spen. This one I have a few more details about.
Yeah, hit me with it.
So I'm a pretty big fan of the Fate series. I particularly liked Fate Zero and Fate Stay Night Unlimited Blade Works. And that kind of stuck out to me for a pretty good Betrayal. So in the entire show, you follow a bunch of characters, but like the four main characters, you have like Shiro, and then you have Archer, who's the red guy, and you have Rin, who is like Shiro's friend around the same age, and then you have Saber, who is from Fate Zero herself. They're all just a variety of characters. Archer and Rin are technically a team because you have to find, you have like a magician who forms a pact with a warrior from the past, and then they all have a competition to kill each other so somebody can get the Holy Grail and make a wish. So Rin is a female caster paired up with Archer. Archer's kind of this arrogant, cocky guy, and he has like dual blades. He's red coat, silver hair, and he agrees to work with Rin. But he has amnesia. He doesn't remember why he's a part of this competition. All of these fighters have a particular reason to be a part of things, but he doesn't really remember why. So he just kind of agrees to be with Rin, just to kind of be a part of the ride and figure out the story for himself. On the other side, you have Shiro and Saber. Now, these are supposed to be enemy forces fighting, but they decide to pair up and be teammates throughout this competition until the end where they have to fight each other. They end up fighting a pretty hard foe called Magician. Magician ends up capturing Saber, and they have to go save Saber. So it's Rin, Shiro, and Archer. And during an integral moment of the rescue, Archer ends up betraying Rin. So he's supposed to be her protector, her soldier, her fighter. He ends up betraying her by protecting the enemy. And it's all confusing for everybody. Nobody understands why. He says, oh, I just go with the strongest. But the real reason is he actually remembers why. He remembers why he's here. He made an agreement to be a part of this game so he could prevent his future. His future is awful. It's just full of desolation, destruction, and just no hope for humanity. And the only way he can imagine stopping it is by killing his younger self. And lo and behold, his younger self is Shiro.
Yeah.
So the betrayal of Archer, betraying the good guys, the team that he's been working with the entire time. He turns around and he tries to fight them. And his main goal in this entire series from then on is to kill Shiro, kill himself, so his future doesn't end up the bleak future that he grew up in. And
yeah, that was intense.
It's a pretty big, intense betrayal where you feel bad for your protagonist here, but at the same time, he has a fully justifiable reason to switching sides and have a background. So it makes it hard to really hate Archer in his point of view because he comes from such a bad place. Like the best villains are the ones you can actually understand their point of view. And in that moment, I think it's a really powerful moment because it starts off super confusing and then he finally reveals it to everybody. And then they have some pretty badass fight scenes.
So then something that I don't remember, did he have his memories from the beginning? Or did he just get them back partway through?
He got them back partway through.
Okay.
Yeah, so if I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure he had amnesia about his entire past. Like, he just has the skills and he's confident and he's all that stuff, but he doesn't remember why he's in a part of this tournament.
Okay, so he wasn't lying back then.
No, and in the beginning, if I remember correctly, he also said, I'll partner with you until I figure something out. Or I think he pretty much said, I'll partner with you until I know what I'm here for. So technically, I guess it's not really betrayal. It's just more of a...
I mean, it's still a betrayal. It happens out of nowhere.
It happens out of nowhere for her, but I guess he's not lying. He said he would kind of help her until a certain moment. He just didn't say, hey, I remember now, so I'm not with you anymore.
Because how close to the end of the series does this happen?
2/3 of the way through.
Okay. Because then there was a period of time where she was going around without having him with her, right? Or, I don't remember. Did she make a pact with someone else?
No, it's pretty much from then on, I believe.
God, it's been a while since I've watched this.
The ending is kind of fuzzy. Like, I remember parts of it, but I remember a good portion of it. After the betrayal is kind of fuzzy, and then I remember like how it ends, I think.
Yeah, because it was a very intense moment when it happened. Because it's kind of weird because you want to root for the main character, but then suddenly it's kind of like the main character's two people, and so you're just like, well, wait, what's going on? Because it sets it up where for a while, Archer's kind of this weird guy, and at least for myself, I was like, I don't really know if I like him. There's something about him that seems off, but then over time, I start to like him more and more, and suddenly I'm like, all right, you know what? He's pretty cool, and then boom.
Right there. Now he's the bad guy.
Yeah. And so it was tough because it's a betrayal where it's like I'm upset with what he did, but at the same time, it's like, God, I can't be.
Yeah. And it's just Fate Zero, Stay Night. That those two are connected. They're basically on the same timeline, same story. And
because one happens after the other.
Right, yeah. Unlimited Blade Works is after Zero. Zero is a prequel. It's an overall really good story. Though I think Zero is a little stronger. I think Fate Stay Night is still great because
it's Fate Stay Night Unlimited Blade Works.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
at first
like
I'm like, wait, what's Stay Night and
Alchemist.
what's Unlimited Blade Works?
No, yeah, it's kind of like Full Metal Alchemist and Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. So there's the original Fate Stay Night, and then they redid it again and had Fate Stay Night Unlimited Blade Works.
Okay. Cool, that makes more sense now.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the original one came out a long time ago.
Yes.
And that was back before it had as nice of a budget as it has now.
Yes. If I remember, it was pretty mildly well received, and then Unlimited Blade Works is like the much better version of it.
Although I still like Zero more.
Oh, I agree with you. I think Zero
was my favorite.
By far the strongest Fate series in existence. The storytelling is just phenomenal. And I guess in a sense, that anime has a really good portrayal too, with the main character. You know, he's all dark and grim and has a really like single-sided goal, and Saber is kind of like the heart of the anime. And when he betrays Saber, he did it for the greater good, but he's not afraid to be the bad guy for the show. I think that's what I liked about it.
Yeah, got it. Did you, just out of curiosity, which one did you watch first?
I watched Zero first.
Okay, sweet. Yeah, I'm glad that's how I watched it, and I'm really glad I watched that one first.
Me too. Like, Fate Stay Night's okay, but I don't like the fact that it would be weird because they portray the same character in a very different light in Fate Stay Night than how he's portrayed in Zero. So I liked how Zero has it, and it makes perfect sense for Fate Stay Night if you watch it first.
Well, because in Stay Night, there's the guy who's supposed to be, I don't know what to call him. He was like the priest or whatever. He was kind of running the thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And if I'd watched, I don't think I would have liked Stay Night very much. But having seen Zero first, I kind of knew about some of the characters. I'm like, oh man, he's the bad guy. Like,
it makes it more interesting. Yeah, because Fate Zero doesn't really end with a happy ending. It's kind of the bad guy wins at the end. And so when going into Fate Stay Night, you have more of already determined hatred for this bad guy. And so you root for these new set of good guys because, you're connected to the whole story overall.
God, yeah, it was so good.
So good. Anyways.
So we're 37 minutes in so far.
Okay.
I've got the next one I'd like to talk about. I don't really care about talking about my third one.
Okay. I really want to talk about our third one. That's the one I saved for last. It's my best one.
Okay. Well, I'm going to do this one then, and then you'll do one more, and then we'll jump into some of the other stuff.
Sure, sounds good.
So this one, I feel, was almost as good as when Moeka kills Mayuri.
Okay.
But I don't know, it was different enough that it was hard to save. So this is Rising of the Shield Hero. This happens early on in the very beginning. You've seen this show.
Yes.
I can tell by your laughing.
Yep.
Yeah. So
okay.
Before we get to the betrayal, I want to talk about a little bit towards the build up to it again, which I think is very, very important in this betrayal. More important in this betrayal than in the previous one that I talked about.
I agree.
So, Rising the Shield Hero starts out where we have our main character, Naofumi, is reincarnated in this new world with 3 others. Whereas the other 3 have different weapons, Naofumi only has a shield. So right off the bat, everyone else feels a little bit more possible or prominent in being able to do things. And it's kind of like Naofumi has the shield. So he's already kind of set up in a sense where he feels like the underdog. Mm-hmm. From here, the team starts, or everybody goes to start, people start trying to join their team to be adventurers, to go out and adventure the world, but nobody wants to team up with Naofumi. So he's kind of left to fend on his own. Then, the beacon of hope, the little moment happens where this girl decides, you know what, sure, I'll come with you, I'll adventure with you. And the whole underdog aspect of the show starts to shift, where at the beginning, where everything kind of feels like it's against Naofumi, we're starting to see a little bit of light in the show.
Yep.
So he is the other thing I forgot to mention before she teams up with him, there's also rumors that are spreading around about him that put him in kind of a distasteful image around the town. So everything just is going wrong for him. But then the girl joins up with him. She shows him the basics of how everything works. She gets him going. They start to get, they kind of start to develop a nice friendship with each other, where they're both happy and having a good time, and they're ready to go and take on the world. But then he wakes up in the morning, and all of the gear and equipment that he had just purchased is gone. So he's like, oh, great, I've been robbed. Then suddenly she's not around until she shows up with a bunch of guards claiming that he did unspeakable things to her during the night. And now all of this underdog stuff that we had before is now just reinforced and thrown back on him. He's seen as trash and garbage, and everybody hates him. And the betrayal here is Multi-S Melromark, I think that's how her name is said. Yeah. And it's so powerful because for so long, I say so long, I think the first episode was like 45 minutes long.
Yeah.
And for most of it, it's just he's getting crapped on. He's getting kind of the short end of the stick. And then they dangle the carrot in front of him and in front of us, and then they pull it away, and it turns out they were just leading us away from the pile of poop over to a cliff to fall off of.
Yep.
And then it's just incredible how big of a betrayal this one was, because we're constantly being battered, and he's being battered, and he doesn't have the greatest personality for stuff, but there's still parts that we just kind of feel for him, and we just want things to work out because he's the main character, and we're like, how is he going to get through this? How is it going to work out? But then it just throws the bombshell, and that the one ray of hope where we're like, okay, there is some goodness here, turns out it was her just manipulating and trying to just completely ruin him. And it does.
Yeah. This
betrayal is so powerful that it basically, I at least the first whole season, and I believe part of the second, it cripples him. Where everybody else is progressing and doing well, he has the snot beat out of him.
I don't know if I'd go that far.
Why do you say that?
I agree. Like, this is like the first episode is very, very strong narratively. It does a really good job at showing you that he is the underdog, that he's got a lot to go. He has a lot bigger journey than everybody else. He's kind of looked down upon already. But then he builds a friendship. The betrayal happens. It's awful. The writing is phenomenal. Like, you feel the low that he is a part of. And I think you feel it for the first 2 or 3 episodes, but it kind of goes away and he kind of becomes a pretty OP character. And then everyone kind of plays it off as, whatever. I don't feel like the weight of the first episode really carries on through the show. I think it carries on for the first few episodes, maybe 4 or 5 at most. But it kind of starts to fade. Yeah, there's still hatred, like the king hates him, all the other fighters hate him. And those moments are fine, but then they start to become more played off as jokes. Like the spear guy hates him throughout the whole show, and he's constantly like, I'm gonna hate you so much, but I'm gonna work with you this one time. But then it's like, I still hate you even though I love you. It becomes less of impactful moment to where everyone still hates him and he's the underdog, and he kind of gains favor throughout the season. And he's not really shit upon or put down a lot. It's just people don't like him and he moves on, but he's more powerful than everybody. So I disagree in the sense that it carries through the whole show and really makes it feel like, or even the second season, because by the end of the first season, I feel like he's pretty far redeemed for the most part. He gets a whole ceremony for himself too, so.
Well, you are right with a lot of those moments where he does redeem himself, and there are a lot of times where you're right, he is overpowered compared to everyone else there. And he gains people that begin to follow him. He has his party that slowly builds up throughout the season. Mm-hmm. But there's still a lot of moments of tension that all kind of point back to the moment where everybody was very distrustful of him, and then that moment of the betrayal where they painted him as being the piece of crap. The only people that he has good relationships with are the people that he's had to prove himself to them, or have an event where he does something that makes it so that there's no way they can really see him in anything else but good favor. But even everywhere he goes, there's always that first there's always the first impressions that it's all where it always sets him where it's like, all right, I have to, I mean, it's a different, where it's like he has to prove himself to them. And sure, with his personality, he just says he doesn't care and he just does what he wants anyways.
I only feel that in the initial city. Once he goes outside of that, there really isn't that there until he runs into those other heroes and they tell on him and such. I think the show's really strong for the most part, carrying that betrayal narrative with him. But I think they kind of lose sight of it partway through.
There are moments, but it always seems to come back. I guess that's kind of what I was talking about. They come back only when he
runs into those characters.
But that's still it coming back, because there's the moments with the church, although that might have been in the second season, I don't remember.
No, it's towards the end of the first season. I know what you're talking about. Because I remember specifically when we talked about the show, I hated a very specific fight scene where they're in the crater and then that church guy is at the top of the crater and it was 90% talking to each other, and then they're just doing all ranged attacks, and like there was nothing interesting. Like the show was so good, and then they spent like 2 or 3 episodes on this. But
that's not what we're here to talk about.
Okay. Anyways, yeah, like the betrayal is great. I think you're right. The beginning, it's one of the strongest first episodes of an anime I've seen. Like it does really good. I do think it does have some elements where it comes back and it is taken care of pretty well. And I think that's mostly when he's in the city. Other than that, I feel like they just bring those characters back to remind you, oh, hey, yeah, he's hated, but then they're going to work together and kind of have play it off as a joke. And it starts off super strong and serious. And I feel like as the anime progresses, it turns more into a lot of tropes and cliches and jokes.
Oh, it 100% does. But there are several times throughout the first season where Malty comes back and she causes more problems for him. Like there's parts like one of the things off the top of my head is when they come after him with all of the guards and some of the spear guys, and they kind of like split up the party for that short period of time. And there's many moments where it's like when things start to go well for him and things are going okay and we're getting that moment of niceness. Malty's always there to come back and just remind us about how
she's awful,
how there's still how she's awful, but there's it's in kind of just how there's a large portion of I say large portion of the world, but really we just know about the one kingdom. But there's a large portion of that kingdom that's still against him because of Malty's position, and it's not until the very end. I don't remember if it was the very end of the first season or the second season when she's kind of when she's finally dealt with. But it's up until that point. It's always just a reminder where she always comes back with something to always and again it's tough because at that point he's not really the underdog. We always know he's going to get through and get out, but the big thing for me is it's that underdog sense and the kingdom being against him and him not, because of the betrayal, it kind of shaped his character to who his character is today, and it's all of that kind of keeps playing out throughout the season. I think
it's a really strong
that's
moment.
what I meant by it keeps coming back.
It's a really strong moment that carries through his character, and I really like the moments when he first meets that one girl. I can't remember her name, the cat girl that he raises to fight with him. How
or was it the bird girl?
No, not the bird girl, the cat girl, the red hair girl.
I don't remember her.
It's like the first thing he buys her from.
Oh, that's right.
Guy. Yeah, like those moments are great because he's very callous and cold because of the betrayal, but then she sort of warms his heart and they kind of build a relationship together. All that stuff I really enjoyed. It's a really good betrayal. I definitely say out of all the animes, though I wish they continued it a little better than what they had. The betrayal itself is phenomenal, and that episode gripped me and forced me to watch the whole series.
It's not as powerful, but I believe the first episode of Rising the Shield Hero had a not quite as powerful, but it was very similar to the impact that Goblin Slayer had.
Agreed. Yeah, it had a very, because it I think where it excels is because you create these expectations of these animes, right? They have all every anime has certain tropes and certain things that they do, just certain writing patterns you see follow a lot of these animes. And because it reversed what you expected out of it, it caught you off guard, and that's what I think makes it stand out.
That's pretty much all I had to say about
it's really good. I like that one. I think that's a great one. All right, Spen, you ready for my big one?
Yeah, hit me with it.
So Aldnoah Zero is a pretty standard anime. It's a mecha anime. It's about fighting. Earth is fighting Mars, essentially, or Venus. A planet. It's fighting a nearby planet. I thought it was Mars, but it might be Venus or the moon. Anyways, it's Earth fighting another planet. Basically two separate populations. They've always been kind of at a tense relationship. You have the princess. Her name is Asilium or something like that, or Lucia. And then the main character, his name is Inaho. And Inaho is like a student, and he's very callous and cold and calculative, and he's not the most interesting main character. He's pretty bland, but he's an expert at tactician. He's great at coming up with a plan that has, high risk, high reward, and knowing how to make it be successful. And he's not afraid to make sacrifices to get there. He understands what risks are there, and he's ready to let those risks happen. He has a sister named Yuki, and everyone always views him, and they kind of hang around to take care of him because they feel like, he doesn't quite understand social structure and everything. But it's just who he is. He's just calculative and doesn't really have a lot of emotion. And throughout the entire series, it's him going into battle and into battle and into battle, making risky moves that end up paying off because he can kind of outplay anybody in the game of chess of war. You follow him, then you follow Asilium, who is the blonde princess who wants peace in this world, but there's a war happening, and she gets attempted to be assassinated by her own team. Sazbom, I believe, is the name of the main antagonist. And he tries to assassinate her. And so she ends up running into Inaho, and they kind of pair together. Then you have a third main character whose name is Slain Troyard. He's best friends with Esalam, or Elucia. I'm going to call her Lucia for this purpose because she has a weird name. They grew up together. They grew up as childhood friends. He's basically madly in love with her and extremely passionate about her. And his entire goal, everything about him is emotional. He's not really the best at making logical decisions and keeping his emotions out of play. He always wears his heart on his sleeve. So you have your opposing characters. You have Inaho and Slain, who are pitted against each other throughout this entire series. You can waiting for their overall conflict. They never really meet. They just are aware of each other. Both have opposing agendas. Now, Slain grew up poor, and he grew up a slave, and was constantly beaten down, and he had a really rough childhood growing up, but he worked his way through the trenches, and he became kind of like an elite member of these people on the planet. And Sazbom kind of takes him under his wing, even though Sazbom's kind of an asshole to him, for lack of a better word. And this whole show, like I said, it's just a pretty standard battle mecha show. Nothing too dramatic happens. Nothing narratively, I think, stands out a whole lot. But what really sucked me into this anime is the very last episode. You know, you have your standard battle. It breaks out. Everyone kind of crashes, and they're in a giant, like, warehouse room almost. And you have Inaho and Elucia and Slain and Sazbom all together. Sazbom was the one fighting Inaho, and both of their mechas have crashed. Inaho's stuck in his mecha. Elucia tries to help him. They've grown closer throughout the entire series, and mostly her to him because he's pretty calculative. And she's trying to help him out of his seat to get him out of the mecha, and Sazbom shoots her in the back. And then she turns around, and Slain is there, and they look at Sazbom, and then Sazbom shoots her in the head. And at this moment, Slain loses it, and he betrays his side that he's been on the entire time. He shoots Sazbom like 3 or 4 times, or he empties his clip into Sazbom, and Sazbom falls against the wall. Looks like he's bleeding out. And as he's loading his gun, preparing to finish off Sazbom, he hears a noise, and he looks over, and he sees Inaho crawling out of his mecha, crawling to Elucia. And that infuriates him more, and he tells Inaho to not move because he hates this guy and he loves Elucia. And yet, at this one moment, Inaho kind of betrays himself. And throughout all of his entire show, he makes calculated decisions. He doesn't do anything out of emotion. He has these flashes of her in her dying moments, of all the memories they had together, and it shows him smile. It shows him almost look like he has emotions and feelings at the time. And in this moment, when he's being told not to do something, he doesn't make a calculated decision. He makes an emotional decision, and he pulls his gun out on Slain, and Slain shoots him in the head. And that's the ending of this anime. Like, that's how it ends. It ends with Slain basically killing the one he loves and his enemy. But it's a nice wrapping bow of each character's narrative. Like, Slain's narrative was to rise through the ranks to stop being treated as dirt. And he gets to that point. And that becomes his ultimate downfall because that leads him to lose the very person he cared about the most. And then Inaho's the opposite, where he had no emotion, had no feelings. He grew feelings, he grew emotions. And in his last moment, he made a decision out of, his love or his feelings. And that led to his demise as well. It's a very bitter-sweet ending, or mostly bitter ending, but I think in that entire scene, I think it all takes place in the last 5 to 10 minutes of the episode. There's just so much narratively happening. You got the betrayal of Sazbom betraying the princess because he technically worked for her. You have Slain betraying Sazbom because he worked for him. You have Inoho betraying himself because he, you know, basically is this type of person. He betrayed those to kind of go with his feelings. And then Slain betraying the princess by killing the princess's chosen warrior kind of thing. Um, it's just all wrapped up in a ton of betrayal. And out of all the animes, that kind of stuck with it the most because it just did the most unexpected thing. It killed all the main characters of the show. That was it. And it didn't really end on like a happy note. It just left it hanging, and it felt real and it felt honest.
Oh, okay.
And then they released a second season, and it's bad.
Oh, you know what?
Do you remember it now?
I do remember it now.
Yeah.
I remember stopping watching it.
I remember regretting watching the second season because I loved the first season and how it wrapped up. I thought it wrapped up in a perfect way. And then they kind of
they're like, take Bexy's.
Yep, they kind of just retcon everything in the second season. Like, no one's dead. Let's move on.
No, that's why I don't remember it being so powerful anymore after that.
Yeah, the second season really takes away from, I think, the strength of the first season.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, to me, it's one of the best betrayals of anime, just because it's such a huge moment that all these characters are kind of doing the opposite of what you would expect them to do.
Yeah, and I think that plays really well into kind of comparing all of the ones we've talked about. When the betrayals have been the most powerful betrayals are ones that, even if you don't notice it at the time, they're ones that fit in with the character.
Yeah.
But they still surprise us in the moment.
Yeah.
And for the most part, it's a character that we've spent time with in the beginning to grow and love. Mm-hmm. And then the results of the betrayal kind of carry on after.
Yeah. It's something that I think lingers with you, when you get emotionally invested in certain characters, and they just do that unexpected thing.
And then I think two examples that really push that as well is we talk about the second season of Aldnoah, how it kind of takes back a little bit of what happened for that first betrayal. So it kind of feels like it makes the betrayal not as powerful later on.
Right.
Same thing like with that first one you were talking about, where in the moment the betrayal is just it's insane.
Yeah.
And then kind of how they move on from it. So if we're gonna write betrayals, and if we want to write a good one, then it's important that it's powerful and it fits and everything there. But then it's got to have maybe whether it's consequences or a lasting impression.
Yeah,
it's got to carry on.
It's got to carry on through the entire story. I think once the betrayal happens, that's the turning point. It shouldn't just be a singular moment that you move on from. I think it should be a turning point to where your narrative shifts directions. And then you kind of continue in that other direction now because it's going to challenge your characters in interesting ways.
So have you seen the show Berserk?
I have not.
In all of my research, the one show that's always talked, it's at the top of every single top betrayal list, and it's the show Berserk.
Okay.
So I'm really interested in watching that show. I have to wait to watch so that the idea of betrayal, and I'm not looking for it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's something that we're gonna want to put into the queue of shows to watch.
Anime book club.
Of the anime book club.
Yeah, I agree. I'm down to watch that. I'm with you.
It's gonna be rough in some moments because I believe the first season's really good, and I think that's supposed to be kind of where it happens. Then the later seasons they're kind of poor. But I mean, we have a track record so far of only watching the first season, so we might be fine.
Yeah, it might be totally fine. But yeah, I think this is an interesting way, and what I take out of this whole, searching anime betrayal is, yeah, like you said, when writing a betrayal, I think it has to be essential to the characters. Like, the characters has to feel natural, it has to feel organic, and it has to make sense. You can't just have something in there just to have a shock value. I think you have to build to it, and then it just has to be everlasting for the rest of the story. It can't just be a small story beat. You make the betrayal happen, and it changes the dynamic of your entire story, and you just got to roll with that dynamic. I think it can really push you to a more creative ending or a creative narrative.
You kind of need, by the looks of it, we need all of these elements kind of playing in together for it to work.
Right.
Because if let's say the next season of Next to Nothing, the characters are going on and doing something, and then suddenly Ness just turns around and kills Tom. It's gonna be like, sure, it's a betrayal, but it's not a powerful one because it's kind of like, well, what the heck?
Yeah, why did
What's
that
the
happen?
point leading up to this?
Yeah.
And then where does it go from there? And then if later on in the series we go like, oh, Ness was infected with this thing, it's like, well, there's no point before it where we've kind of hinted or alluded to it.
Exactly.
So it's kind of feels like it's I don't know. You can't just put a betrayal in and then give your reason after. You've got to kind of build up to it in a sense.
Yeah, you gotta set the stage. You gotta warm the oven. You gotta proof the bread, as you would.
Yeah, it's tough. I tried doing some exercises with like writing out some short little, like not scripts, but just kind of like summary events of like a series. I'm like, how would I write a betray into it?
Yeah.
And I kept trying and trying and trying. It's hard to do. Like when these shows that have done it, like these are expert writers that have crafted
all
these
writers
things.
are significantly better than me. I think where some of these shows may falter with their betrayals is because you have an archetype of an anime, or even a TV show. Like Hollywood's bad at doing this too. You have an archetype you've created, and you have to follow that archetype. And when you stray away, it tends to have resistance from fans because people don't like change. So you always have to kind of quickly reel back into the same archetype afterwards. And I think that's kind of where some writing really falters, and because you tend to create this big thing for yourself and you just kind of feel pressured to stay on that path.
I wonder if some situations it's also a comfort thing, where
Possibly,
you always have this plan to put this betrayal in, and then after the betrayal, you just kind of you just start just kind of like writing them, and then you just naturally start writing them back into their normal thing without even noticing it's happening.
That's fair. That could be a total thing. I don't know. I feel like if a betrayal really happened for art, like Next to Nothing, I personally would like it to carry on forever, but in the type of show we have, it'd be kind of challenging too, because we mostly write comedy. And
Yeah.
it'd be hard to
That
have.
is also true.
It'd be hard to have something so dramatic without reeling back a little bit, because we can't just go have a huge dramatic moment and then, carry that drama forever. We have to switch back to comedy at some point.
Well, it's tough too, because you could put in a betrayal that's built into the comedic element of it, but then it's not a powerful betrayal.
Yeah.
Because it's just funny.
Correct.
So, yeah.
But oh man, that made me think that'd be really interesting to write a series that almost shifts genres. Like not every season, but like halfway through season maybe. It like kind of like changes genres and then goes in that direction, and then maybe if you decide to change it again, you can. It'd be really interesting to see that type of story unfold. It starts off as like a sitcom, and then it kind of transitions into a drama, and then it transitions into a horror, and then like a murder mystery. You know what I'm saying?
I think it'd be really challenging to do.
I agree.
If you were going to do it well, I think the most important part would be, God, you know what? Not even then. I was thinking it'd be the characters, but you'd have to have a really good way of writing it through. Oh God. Oh no, I'm trying to remember. There was a show that kind of does this. Shoot.
Can you describe it?
Not without giving away the show.
Isn't that the point, though? Do you want me to know what show it is?
Yeah, but no. But what I mean by that is like, it's one of the most well-written shows that I've ever watched. Oh God, I'm gonna find it.
Okay.
From the New World.
From the New World.
Shinsekai Yori. So how it does it is the genres shift, I believe, in this, and how the show does it. And it's hard to say without talking about it, but I can't talk about it without giving away spoilers, because it's one of those shows where everything's so kind of written very well into a neatly tight package, but there's one genre that is most of the show, but it presents itself as a different genre in the beginning. And then as you go through it's kind of like certain curtains start to fall back, and you slowly see the shift in genre as it goes.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
All right. I'll have to possibly check it out.
I think this is a show you would like.
All right. I'd have to check it out then.
Yeah, because it's this. I believe it's one season, but it kind of feels like two separate seasons, and it's like 22 or 24 episodes or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think it's a super popular one. It kind of slipped by underneath a lot of people's radars. Because again, it presents itself as kind of this casual one genre, and then so you don't really expect what the show is actually about. So,
all right. Well, I'm interested. I'll put that on my list to check it out.
I'm trying to think of what I can say to help bump it up your list to like a closer spot. But
I'll probably check it out real soon, Spen.
Okay.
Does it have a dub?
I don't know. I want to say probably not.
Well, that's gonna make it hard for it to be up my list.
Oh, so transitioning over into the anime book club with that, talking about dubs. Have a dub. So I never watched the dub. I couldn't bring myself to watch the first dub episode of Serial Experiments Lain.
Spen! Man, come on!
The reason for that, and it's going to sound like a really dumb reason at first, is I recently started watching, it's an anime, it's a really ridiculously long title. You wouldn't like the show, so don't even try watching it. But it's like, something along the lines of, I don't want to get hurt, so I dumped all of my stats into defense.
Yeah, I actually watched that show.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I started watching it. I was, Funimation because Funimation has the sub and the dub.
Yeah.
And I was on the 4th or 5th episode, and I started the 6th episode, and for some reason it started the sub version for me. Or sorry, it started the dub version instead of the sub. And I was like, this is terrible, because the Japanese version has the characters where they're in kind of like elementary school, but when you listen to the dub version, they all the characters sound much older, as if they're like early high school or early to late high school. I was just like,
I mean, that's just all voice acting.
I
guess I'm used to it. I didn't get bothered by the dub at all.
I couldn't do it. I didn't like it. And I understand why it's like that, because in Japan, there are tons of different age groups for people that are voice actors and everything, because it's a much more popular kind of thing.
Yeah.
As well as people put a lot of work and effort into practicing so they can sound like younger people, because there's a lot of shows and stuff for animation work for younger people.
Yeah.
So I understand that, but it just threw me off. I was like, I can't do this. Like they just sound wrong. They're not the young, lovable, adorable. Because in the Japanese version, they also, whenever they talk, they sound a lot more lighthearted, and kind of like there's like a bit of joy in most of what they're saying. But in the English version, they were just like talking casually. And I couldn't do it. It wasn't good. And it was at that point where it finally put the nail in the coffin, because I kept pushing off watching Serial Experiments Lain, the first episode in English, and that was just like, I'm like, oh no, I can't do it.
You have to do it, Spen. I need you to feel the pain that I felt watching this show. I need you to understand how awful it is and why I hated it so much.
So you say why you hated it.
Yes.
Did you start watching it in Japanese?
It is so much better. It's so much better subbed than dubbed. Now, granted, I will say the story also becomes more interesting by episode 4. I don't know. Honestly, I every complaint I mostly had about the first 3 episodes, I felt similar in episode 4, but then there's a couple story beats that happened that I'm like, okay, I have to continue with this. At least I don't hate it as much. And then by episode 5, I was more into the story. And then episode 6, I'm kind of with it. So I'm pretty excited to watch 7, 8, and 9 now. But even, I don't know, like, I think I still stand by a lot of what I said with the first 3 episodes because I felt a difference watching 4, 5, and 6. Not because of the voice acting is so much better, but I felt like there was more sound design in it. There was more ambient noises. There was more.
Did you try going back and re-listening to the first 3 episodes in Japanese?
I did not. I'm just
Okay,
afraid that I'm going to hate them, and I just really didn't want to.
I think that ambient noise is stuff that was... Because the 4, 5, and 6 don't feel any different to me than they did for the first 3. So I think just the dub was just that bad.
Okay.
They just...
Well, maybe...
Because back then, a lot of the times that you'd be given the Japanese version, and then you would have to recreate all of the sound effects, layer new things on top, and do all that. So then all of the original sound effects from the Japanese version wouldn't be there.
Okay.
And due to time constraints and low budgets, I think sometimes things just got left out and avoided.
That's fair. Yeah, it's absolutely possible, because I remember thinking, like, this doesn't sound as bad. And it wasn't just the voice acting. Like, I instantly recognized the voice acting was better, but like I was still kind of worried that it was going to feel super slow and boring, but it was slow. And I still stand by, I think the anime is a little too slow. I think it could kind of speed up a little bit. And I think that heavily contributes to time frame. Like the early 2000s, late 90s was a much slower time frame than it is now. Like we live in a society where story beats are boom, 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 boom. And back then, stories, you could have a boom, a beat, a boom, a beat, and it was more okay.
Yeah, I was actually just kind of related to that. My dad was watching this old, like black and white show of, it was like these guys trying to solve a murder and how they were talking with all different people. And it's incredibly slow compared to how they would do it in shows like today. And it was just really neat seeing the comparison.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that just plays to attribute to society and the time frame we're in. So I think if this anime came out today, I don't think it would be as good just because it would be too slow for today's standards.
It wouldn't be.
But because of the era it came out, and I think it works pretty well for that time frame.
Yeah, with what you said there, thinking about it, if it came out today, I wouldn't enjoy it like I am right now.
Yeah, I think part of the reason why...
Again, it's the nostalgia.
Yeah, it's nostalgia, and a cult classic is kind of why I think it gets away with being this way. Kind of like Cowboy Bebop. I almost feel a very similar way about Cowboy Bebop. Like, I think Cowboy Bebop is a masterpiece, but I do think it lingers longer than modern anime would.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Anyways, we're talking about Serial Experiments Lain. Go ahead. I want you to talk about it first.
Okay, well, I still like the show. I'm still really enjoying it.
Okay.
I feel that you enjoyed... I know we're not talking about it yet. We're talking about the 4th episode, but I think you enjoyed the 6th episode more than I did.
Okay.
From how you were talking about it. Not that I didn't enjoy it. I just didn't... I don't know. Maybe there was just that much of a... Maybe we enjoyed the 6th episode on the same level.
Yeah.
But it's just you had that much of a climb.
I was going to say, yeah, I had started at very, very low expectations.
So there's a kind of a fair bit that happens in episode 4.
Yeah.
There's a bit more talk about those, what are they called? The hacker group, the Knights?
Yeah, the Knights.
Yeah, we see a little bit about this game where there's this glitched thing with the kids.
Yeah.
That was kind of weird, where the kid's up on the roof or whatever, and then in the game these things are happening, but everything he sees is if it's through the wire still, so he ends up shooting that girl.
Yeah. It's still all kind of confusing. Like, am following along with certain aspects, and then there are some aspects that just make no fucking sense. Whether it's narratively on purpose or something else, or it's just environment. I'm really hoping we just get answers for everything. I feel like we got some answers through these last 3 episodes. But I'm still mostly pretty confused.
Yeah. I think if you're cool with it, I'm fine with talking about episode 4 and 5 together as one.
Yeah.
I think 6, there's enough there that that one should be a separate one.
That's fine. I mostly was ready to talk about it last few days ago, and I've kind of forgotten a few bits of it, so I need you to kind of retrace the memories.
I'm kind of the same way right now.
Fuck.
No, it's okay, because the big things that happened in episode 4 and 5 was we learned about that game that's messing with people, where they log in, they download this game. It's kind of like quotation marks an illegal game.
Yeah.
They like downloaded off this other thing, and then it starts to mess with them. So then even when they log out of the game, they're still kind of in it.
Yeah.
So then they're still playing it outside of it. We also see the thing with there's the traffic lights are starting to be messed with, and it's causing some issues there. I don't remember if it happens in the 6th episode or if it was the 5th episode, but we see Lane up in the sky.
That's the 6th episode.
Okay, never mind. Sorry,
Yeah,
that hasn't
really
happened yet.
Fucking weird. The 5th episode stands out to me probably the most. I think I really enjoyed the 5th the most. It was about her sister mostly, less about her.
Yeah, we definitely learned a lot about her.
Yeah, we learned a lot about her. And the sister, I think, because what's fascinating is that at first I remember they're eating at dinner, and it shows her sister kind of looking at Lane and looking at her mom and then her dad, and then it shows her just fuck all elsewhere. Like it just does a dramatic cut, and then she's not even at the dinner table anymore. She's like in the city doing whatever, and completely like she has like some weird experiences. Like the world's kind of glitching out on her, and like she's changing places a lot. She's like switching where she's at. She's being disoriented. It almost feels like she's under attack from something.
Ooh, that's an interesting way of putting it.
It reminded me a lot of like I watched a show recently, a couple months ago, called Alice in Wonderland or Alice in Borderland. That's what it was. Alice in Borderland, where these people are in Tokyo and then everybody disappears. And they get teleported to. Well, I think they get teleported to the same Tokyo, just in like a virtual reality version of it.
Oh, okay.
Anyways, I feel like this is kind of what's happening to her at first, but then she gets back home, and lo and behold, she sees her sister, and her sister's confused. Lane is very confused on why she sees her, and it's almost eerie. And you come to find out that Lane isn't looking at her sister; she's looking at this weird crystallized thing. And then her sister walks in from the dinner table.
God, I forgot about that.
That moment really stood out to me. Like, okay. I don't know what's going on, but this is interesting. I don't know what it is. But it was interesting.
Well, I think that's related to what happens with Lane in her room later on, where the doll, I believe it was the doll that was talking to her about things.
Yeah. Okay.
And then we also see her mom appear. I don't remember if we see her dad appear. But it's like the worlds of the real world and the Wire are crossing, or the Wire is able to create manifestations or images of these other things in the real world.
Or maybe they're not in the real world. Maybe this is kind of like a Matrix situation.
See, I don't know. I think it's in a tough situation where I think for the most part we're in the real world, but we don't know what is real in the real world.
Yeah.
Because we saw it create that manifestation of her sister.
Right.
And so because Lane's sister saw her manifestation, I think it means that whatever's created there, everybody kind of sees. It's not something that's
Well, what's interesting
in their mind, but I don't know.
For the majority of episode 5, it focused on her sister, but not the sister to dinner, not the real sister. It focused on the manifestation. So that's kind of what makes me think that maybe they're not in the real world. Maybe the real world is trying to communicate with this internet world. Like maybe the the world we're following is the Wired. It's definitely there's definitely some like interdimensional stuff happening.
So I looked up on Wikipedia. There is kind of like episode summaries.
Yeah.
And I looked those up of episode 4 and 5. If you're cool, I'm just going to read those out here and see if that changes things.
Yeah, sure.
So episode 4 says, rumors are flying around school and on the Wired in regards to numerous senior students of various high schools committing suicide, with each of the deceased being addicted to the online game called Phantoma.
Yeah.
Interested, Lain investigates only to discover that the game was glitched with a tag game for kids in which a little girl scares the students to their deaths. Moreover, she finds that the deaths were most likely caused by the elite secretive hacker group known as the Knights of the Eastern Calculus. Later at night, she senses the men in black who've been spying on her earlier. When she tells the two to go away, a sound wave penetrates through her window, causing the two to fall back and drive away in their black car. I forgot about that.
Oh, yeah, that was a moment that stuck out to me. I forgot too. That's what also made me think that they're not in the real world. So I don't think...
Well, see, but I think they are in the real world, but the Wire's crossed over into it, and things that happen in the Wire are happening in the real world. Or sorry, the Wire can exist in the real world.
See,
I mean, you could be right.
I feel it's
though,
the opposite.
But that's what I'm feeling.
I'm sticking with the Matrix thing. I think like they're in a Wired world. I think somehow Lain transferred her body into a Wired world version of her world, right? Which would make the most sense to me because there's all these different things that have happened that don't physically make sense. And it for me, the Wired leaking in doesn't explain it enough. If she was already in the Wired and maybe the real world is leaking in, that makes more sense because she needs to break out, kind of thing.
See, but I think the reason why the Wired is affecting the real world is because that kid shot the girl who, because there's like there was that that game of tag happening, and I think it was the two games kind of got mixed together. So the one girl thought she was playing a game of tag, so she was always chasing after this guy to tag him, and the other guy thought it was some creepy horror type thing in this maze that he was traveling through. And so because he thought he was kind of like playing this like RPG in a maze type thing.
Yeah.
And so then he thought he needed to defeat her. So the gun I don't know if he created the gun or the gun appeared, but then he shot her.
He just used his finger and then that shot.
Or no, that's what it was. And then she died as if she had been shot. And so that's why I think it's the real world messing with, or the real world is being messed with by the Wire.
Okay. I mean, that's
why I think.
All right, that does make sense. But see, I still feel like it's the opposite, only because in the beginning, we had very different perspectives, mostly because I watched a terrible version of the show. And where you say everyone kind of feels like they know what's going on. You know, like the dad's relationship with the daughter was weird. And
well, it's not that they feel they know what's going on. It's
that they know
there's something weird.
They know there's something weird, yeah. And I feel it's more they know, like, the Wired is controlling everybody around her and she's leaking in and out.
Okay.
I think
it's gonna be interesting to see.
I think she's having instances of being in the real world and then being in the Wire at the same time. And it's like the Wired is almost like a alternate reality of the world for her. She's in that half the time and out of it half the time because she has like different personalities throughout the show. She has like a personality of confidence and she knows what she's doing and she's very driven. And then another personality where she feels shy and timid and kind of follows along. You just see different versions of her. And either she has a split personality, or I feel like she's in different parts of the world at each time. Because then that's kind of where the sister made me think of that, where she had her two versions of her sister, and one of them turned out to be a digital being or some kind of amalgamation of a something.
I don't know. See, I think the creation of her sister is just maybe it's the Knights or something from in the Wire that's created this version of her, because I believe she was out and about or whatever, seeing weird things out in the city, and then she comes home, and when she comes home, God, I'm gonna have to rewatch that now. I don't remember.
Another thing,
If she came home and then it was the other one that was, or there was one that came home was the weird one.
the one that came home was the weird one. We followed that creation as if that was her, and then come to find out it wasn't actually her.
Well, so I think we should hold on to this here and restart and come back to this after we talk about a little bit what happens in episode 6.
All right, before we do that, I just want to say one small thing that kind of helps my theory a little bit, I think, is every time she goes in her room, she's walking through water. She's on the second floor of a house. It doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't. It's very weird.
It's a thing that drove me nuts watching these episodes. I'm like, why is her floor full of water with electronics? It doesn't make any sense. And then that, like I said, it hit me where I think this is a different world.
Okay.
But anyways, continue.
That'll be interesting to see.
Let's talk about episode 6.
Before we do that, there was just a quick summary of episode 5 here as well.
Yeah.
Where amidst the events surrounding Tokyo having its traffic information transmission system hacked to cause deliberate accidents, Lane experiences a series of hallucinations that teach her the nature of the wild, or of the wired in relation to the real world, by means of inanimate objects in her room and eventually her parents. In the meantime, Mika is driven to terror from the Knights repeatedly communicating in usual ways for her to fulfill the prophecy. Because Mika is her sister.
Yes.
And when she was walking around, when she was out in the restaurant or whatever, there was like the fulfill the prophecy. She kept seeing that in different areas.
Mm-hmm. But again, that wasn't actually her. That turned out to be the weird creation version of her.
Yeah. Well, but was it though? That's the question. Who was it?
That's why I think Lane's in the digital world.
Is maybe her subconscious was somehow her subconscious was in the wired, was like sent to the real world. I don't know. There's so many weird things going on.
That's why I'm sticking with the Matrix.
But I don't know. Well, in episode 6, there's some stuff that happens that makes me even more confused. So.
yeah. It starts off by like kids just freaking worshiping the sky. They're just like, to the sun. They're all like raising their hands up to the sky. It's like,
well, I think they're raising their hands to Lane. The embodiment of Lane that appears in the sky. It's just Lane doesn't see it right away.
Right. And then eventually she does see it, but not just her. Everybody sees it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was weird.
So I guess I'll read the synopsis of that episode then. At night, when Yasuo checks in on Lane, he sees a dramatic change in her room arrangement, the upgrade to her Navi computer system, which worries him. As Lane hangs out with Alice, along with Julie and Rika in the district, she notices that children are looking up to the sky, raising their arms, only to realize that they are looking at an image of herself that appears in the sky. Lane searches for the reason behind the strange happenings and finds Professor Hodgkinson, the creator of Kids, an experiment that started 15 years ago, tried to gather psi energy from children and store it. Through the result of the project destroyed the children. Now it seems that the Knights have gotten hold of the project schematics. When the men in black return, Lane goes outside to see them. The coolant system in her room bursts, leading the men in black to confirm that the Knights planted a parasite bomb there. So the entire time, we're led to believe that these guys in black were supposed to be the Knights. Turns out they're a completely different group that not related.
Yeah. So here's my theory on what happened. I think all those kids that were connected to that experiment, it was like some way to, the experiment was something about like combining their consciousness or whatever it was, or to gather the psi energy, and then they all died in the result of this. I think that collective group of them turned into like maybe like a conscience or consciousness, and I think they're the Knights.
So
I think
like
because
you think like the kids' collective conscience is the Knight.
Mm-hmm.
I was just thinking, what if they're the ones who created Lane?
Well, that's another good one. Let me finish.
Yeah, you finish yours.
the
Go ahead.
here. So no, it's good. But I mean, I don't know. It's possible at this point. But so I think the collective consciousness of them is the Knights, and they're trying to bring other people over to into the Wired to kind of maybe like join their consciousness. And that's why we're seeing some people dying, because it's like this consciousness is affecting them. But I think because Lain was starting to get close to figuring out about that experiment, that's when the Knights were like, we got to stop this. So they planted the bomb at that point, and it blew up.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think. That's what I think something is happening.
How do you explain
like
Lain being in the sky?
I think, well, we didn't really see much of that kind of stuff until after Lain upgraded her computer.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe all of those. So the girl early on at the beginning, the girl died or whatever, and she was emailing everybody. Yeah. I think Lain was the only one, from how we saw the other characters react to it, I think Lain was the only one responding to it and talking to that girl. So I think it's kind of like that consciousness started to latch onto her. And they were like, because she was communicating with them. And so then because of that, it was drawn to her versus everyone else. And then Lain slowly started kind of getting more into it and building the computer. And she has this super version of it where she can send herself into it, whereas most others don't have that kind of technology. So I think because of that, they were maybe able to, quotation marks, copy her in a sense.
But then at the same time, throughout the show, like the first few episodes, I remember when she went to the club, people think they've seen her in other places.
Mm-hmm. Because I think while she goes to sleep, I think they use her. Because it's kind of like she's asleep, so it's like maybe she's she's in her sleeping or whatever, so they're maybe able to interact with her body or something, or maybe they've created a version of her that now wakes up and does things. Because the moments when she started staying up late and going to that party, or staying up later and doing stuff with her friends, that's when they said at the party, like, we haven't seen you in a while. So that's why I think they're using her when she's asleep.
Okay.
But I don't know, because there's still a lot of other holes in all of that. So
I still think she's a part of the Matrix, and then the real Lain is playing with a computer and appearing in there. I don't know. I'm sticking
but that's
with this
also a possibility.
Yeah, because I also think, like, if she was in the Matrix, how she appears in the sky could have been like, hey, that's just her looking into her monitor. And maybe she sees herself from her computerized version of this world.
Who knows? That's also a possibility.
What I need to know, Spen, is why is the floor just consumed with water? Why is there so much water in her bedroom only? How is it not leaked into the house? Why is the house not flooded? How does her computer work? I have to know those answers.
Well, how is it that Goku can go into a capsule that slows down time or speeds up time for him so he can train in there for 100 days? And then when he comes out of it,
look, man,
he's fine.
That's the science of that world. This isn't explained any of this science yet.
Dang it, that's true.
This hasn't explained anything to me. It seems like her room is just constantly wet, and yet when other people enter the room, they don't seem to care that there's water on the ground. Like, her dad went to visit her again when she was in the room, and you hear him step in water, and yet he doesn't, like, address it. He's not like, why is there water on the floor, Lain? You're grounded. It's just like he's talking about the computer. It's like, you need to be careful, girl. And she's like, I know what I'm doing.
Honestly, I think it was just done because the way they do the style for how everything appears in there.
Yeah.
It's all very dark, except for where some of the light is with the computer and stuff. So I think they had to do something like that so that it looked natural with her walking up to it. Because they needed something to make it so there was some sort of floor. So I think it was just a decision made so that it didn't look weird as she was walking over nothing to get up, or walking over blackness to get up to the computer. That's all I think it is.
I'm going to fix that until I get an answer. I better get an answer out of this show.
I don't think you're ever going to get an answer on that. I think that's all it is.
Worst
It's
anime
just
ever. If I don't
just
get
a decision so that it doesn't look weird with her walking over just
I refuse to
pitch
accept
black.
that, Spen. I'm determined. We've got 6 more episodes. I better get a fucking answer.
You're not going to get an answer, I guarantee it. I feel fairly confident that that's all it is, so it just doesn't look weird with her walking in there.
Either way, I will say, like, I'm glad that I'm more into the anime now. I'm glad I started watching the sub. You have to watch at least the first episode, though. You gotta do it for me, man. You gotta do it so you can feel the pain that I felt watching 3 of
I'll
these
go and
episodes.
watch it. I'm gonna go and have some lunch
Okay.
after we finish this, and then I should have had lunch before the podcast, but I'm gonna go have some food, and then I'll watch it while I eat that food.
Good. And then we can talk
I'm not
about
gonna
it.
watch I guarantee I'm not gonna watch the whole first episode.
You need to watch the whole thing.
I don't want to do it.
I went through 3 of those episodes, Spen.
You made the choice.
I thought to
watch
expected
it in its
the Japanese
lesser
to be
version.
just as bad.
You watched it in its lesser version, which is English dub.
I'm sorry that most dub is not this terrible.
No, yeah, but it's also English dub from back then. It's pretty
Again,
bad.
I've watched a lot of anime from back then. I don't remember any of it being this terrible.
All of your examples from anime for back then were kind of like the mainstream things that we saw on like
No way.
televised
no
television.
Way. Hold on a second. I'm looking up an anime I
Beyblade,
watched. I'm looking up an anime.
Metabots. You were talking about all those. Cowboy Bebop, that was different. It was like a top quality, it was
one moment. There's another
made
anime.
tons of money.
There's other animes I watched that weren't. How old is Serial Experiment Lain?
It was like
98.
1998.
Okay, all right. So I watched an anime called D and Angel. Oh, it was 5 years later. Dang it.
Yeah, yeah.
I watched another anime. You know what? I don't remember any anime being this terrible. I'm going to find an obscure anime from 1996. And I bet you it's going to be better than this.
Sure, but I'm going to tell you right now it's going to be an obscure anime. And it's going to be just as bad if there's even an English version of it.
I'm determined to find something by next week.
I mean, even if you went back and watched the original episodes of like Naruto in English versus Japanese, you're going to notice some differences.
Yeah, I mean, you notice differences now too, but
yeah, you're going to be like, wow, the Japanese version is a bit higher quality. And it's just because they had so much more, it was so much more popular over in Japan than it was over here.
Yeah.
And so they made the money off of it. They had the funds for it. Out here, it was just kind of like, well, maybe it'll work.
Well, I'm glad that animes become more popular in general.
Yeah, me too.
I could not watch anime if they were all like this in the dubbed.
Yeah.
But
this anime, I'm going to watch most of the first
episode. You have to watch all of it, Spen. You have to watch all of it.
But we've been going for a fair amount of time. That's pretty much all the time that we have. I'm excited to watch the next 3 episodes.
I am too.
Oh, here's something I just noticed. There's 13 episodes.
Okay. So
what I would like to do is we'll watch 7, 8, 9. We'll watch 10, 11, 12. And then we'll watch 13 and we'll just do like a talk about the whole thing in general. How's that?
I guess we can do that.
We'll have a week off where we only have to watch for 1 episode.
Okay. That's fine.
Because I think it lets us talk. We'll watch the 1 episode. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about the whole series, and then it gives us time to talk about the next show that we're going to be watching and kind of our expectations for it and what we're looking forward to it. That way we can have that talk before we actually start it. And I think that'd be kind of fun.
Okay, I think that's fair.
So yeah.
Cool.
Guys, if you're still watching, thanks for sticking around. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can get more content like this all the time.
Yeah.
And we've also got gameplays where some of the members stream every Saturday, play some video games, they have a good time. And yeah.
We also,
if you have a wallet in your pocket and it's burning a hole with all that money that you want to spend, don't forget to stop by our Patreon where you can support us and give us all of your money.
Yeah.
Because we're here to take it from you.
And if you don't feel like you want to do that, you can also check out our store where you can buy some of our stuff. So you feel like you're actually getting something worthwhile.
Yeah.
But if you're here because of the anime aspect, we do Cowboy Bebridged and Tower of God Abridged. Feel free to check those out.